What's going on YouTube? Welcome back. As you can see today I am in a new location. I am actually in a studio that I just started renting. I pretty much do this every off season where I rent a studio for, sometimes it's only for a few months. The last 2 years it's been about 4 months, and the other time I had it for a whole year, but I literally didn't step in it once the wedding season started. But I'm really pushing to kind of get back into studio work. So yeah, rented this place and we'll see where it goes. But today I'm actually doing a headshot session, and I thought it was going to be a great opportunity to see how the Fuji X-T2 is going to stack up to the D750 with studio lights, you know, a fully controlled studio environment. So that's what I've got going on today. I've got a headshot client coming in shortly. We're doing a 4-light setup with some Godox lighting, the 8600, 8362, V860 version 2. So I'm going to be using the same focal length, the same settings, the same lights, light positions, the same person. Everything's going to be the same. And we're going to see kind of a file comparison between the D750 and the X-T2. I like comparing those two because the X-T2 is 24 megapixels and so is the D750, and they're kind of around the same price point. So I'm going to take a Nikon D750 with the 85mm 1.4G, and then I'm going to take the Fuji X-T2 with their 56mm 1.2, and I'm going to compare the two against each other, which this should lean towards Nikon considering it's a $1,600 lens versus a about $800 lens. So I'll be kind of upset if I can't tell the difference, or if the Fuji is sharper or something like that. But who knows, I'm keeping an open mind. I'm really excited to see how these two perform against each other in this type of situation. So in order to do that, I've actually got a friend here today who I'm doing headshot work for. So you can come on in. This is Richard. He is an actor who does stage and
voiceover and film work.
And he's looking for some updated headshots since he's changed his look. So we're going to do some shots with the Fuji. He's thankfully allowed us to do that today, to experiment a little bit with him, just so that you guys can see the results and make a good choice of your camera. So thank you, Richard, for helping us out.
Thank you, man.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So we go into like the politician. All right, let's. I want it. So we can do whatever we want to do, okay. But I want you to kind of keep it as similar as possible when I go to switch.
Okay.
All right. So it's kind of like lock in.
I'll just.
Perfect. You're like a statue. Sweet!
Oh, that was it?
That's it!
That was simple.
Well, we didn't even need to do that extra stuff. I just wanted one image to kind of like compare. Okay guys, now I've got these photos up in Lightroom, and one thing I want to address right off the bat, I was not prepared for how different these were going to look based on their starting exposure. So I've got the Nikon at ISO 100 and I've got the Fuji X-T2 at its ISO 200, and in studio these looked almost exactly the same, even looking at the histogram, but the Nikon was obviously a stop lower. So I pushed the Nikon about 0.8 and that got the exposure to match perfectly. I'm not really addressing the dynamic range in this just because it's a pretty flat scene. We don't have any dramatic highlights or shadows to recover or anything like that. So I just wanted to kind of briefly talk about that so you guys aren't wondering if you see +8 what that exactly means. I got the histograms of the two files as close as I could get. So here are the two images. Pretty close in terms of crop, but I tried to sit in the same position thinking that 84mm equivalent of the Fuji was going to be identical to 85 on the Nikon, and as you can see it's still a bit shorter. So on the left right there is the Nikon file, on the right is the file from the Fuji X-T2. So you can see that the focal length isn't exactly equivalent. The Nikon is definitely a little bit longer, a little bit closer than the X-T2. I'm not going to crop in exactly, but I'll still bring it up so you guys can kind of see the detail one to one. And I think it's close enough to kind of see a representation. His head is almost the same size, but we're just looking at clarity overall, quality overall. The first thing I noticed when looking at the two images is the Nikon, this is at 0 tint. So if we go into develop real quick, on the Nikon file, this is both the Nikon before and after the exposure adjustment, but you can see we've got 6150 as a white balance and 0 as a tint. So if I go back into the library compare module by just clicking C, so comparing the two side by side, you can see that the Fuji is inherently a little bit more of a green tone to it, a green tint, and the Nikon has a little bit more of a magenta tint compared to one another. Now if I go into the Fuji file and flip into auto white balance, you can see it's actually going to add a little bit of warmth, about a +100 and +6 tint compared to what the Nikon would have registered. And I think that the Fuji just knows its color is a little bit more green, and it's going to give us that magenta in the auto to kind of balance it. And I think that the auto white balance is actually pretty darn good for this. Maybe just a tiny bit too warm and still a tiny bit too green for my taste, but overall I really like where it is as a starting point. Now I just want to address the sharpening before we look at these files one to one. I have them at the base for Nikon, so the calibration on both of these is Adobe standard. We're not using any of the Fuji or Nikon camera presets for calibration. And then in terms of detail, I have them at Adobe's base detail profile, which this isn't how I would actually sharpen either of these cameras files. I just wanted to see a comparison of like what's coming out of the camera with a little bit of sharpening applied. We're not going to go all the way down to 0. So I'm going to zoom in here at 1 to 1. We're going to get out of the compare module. So here we have the Nikon file and here we have the Fuji file. We are zoomed in 1 to 1, and just looking at the clarity, guys, I don't see a difference at all. I mean, they are both perfectly sharp. We're at 5.6 on both of them, so technically the depth of field on the Fuji is going to be a little bit deeper, but in terms of clarity on the part that is in focus, you know, tag sharp on the eyes, as you can see, we get all the way into the ears where we have good clarity, and we just start falling out of focus midway through the head. But overall, just looking at it, they're pretty much identical in their default sharpening. Richard did a really good job of holding that expression as I changed cameras and position and everything, so thank you very much for that, Richard. In general, I see very little difference as it pertains to clarity. Now, the color I think is a little bit better on the Nikon. I kind of like the skin tones just a touch more. I feel that the yellows are a little bit too strong on the Fuji's default. Now, obviously, we can go in and adjust color. I just think that the Nikon file shown here, I think that gives us a better overall starting point for color. Obviously we can push this file either direction because it's all, you know, we're not recovering any details whatsoever. But if you guys are wondering, you know, if that Fuji X-T2 is going to give you, you know, sharp, really nice results in a studio setting, it absolutely is. It's going to give you all the detail that you can expect from something like a DSLR of equivalent megapixels. So just wanted you guys to see that real quick. Hopefully this answers some questions. I'm also going to give access to you guys, the people who watch this channel. I'm going to let you guys download these files. I've actually got a link for you here. Hopefully it's on the screen right now. It's also going to be down in the description, and that way you guys can kind of see on your setup the difference with the files, and if you kind of want to push the detail or try to mess with the exposure and stuff and see what happens to the X-T2 files compared to the D750 files, or maybe even files that you're using, just so you can kind of get an idea of what to expect in terms of sharpness and clarity, because obviously a YouTube video only does so much, but yeah, hope you guys enjoyed that. If you want to check out more of the session, I'll be posting some of these finals up on my Instagram, so you can follow me there at Rob Hall Photo. Please like and subscribe if you want to see more. Otherwise, take it easy, YouTube.